Okay, so where we left off was somewhere between pre-labor and early stage 1 labor. But let's take a step back, and now we're back at we're at early stage 1 labor. And the way we know we're at early stage 1 labor is our contractions have become progressive in nature. They still might not be super intense or super frequent, but there's been a shift from the sporadic nature of pre-labor, and now there's some consistency, and now that means we're in early stage 1 labor. Now, most likely at early stage 1 labor, you're still in your home and you are still using distraction when you're able, because maybe those contractions aren't super intense. You can talk through them, walk through them, maybe rest through them. And you'll just want to do that as long as possible. There's no sense hunkering down for a contraction that's not that intense. You're going to save some of those strategies for later on when you need them. Okay, so somewhere though, when we're still in early stage 1, we're going to want to start timing contractions. And there are a lot of apps with contraction timers in them. I mean, the technology is really simple, so I really can't recommend one over the other. What I would recommend is if you see yourself using an app, download it, maybe even today, and play around with it a little bit, and make sure that you can find the data that you put in a way that makes sense to you. Because, it'll do a really good job of keeping time, but if you call your midwife and you're not able to describe the pattern over the last hour, then the timer isn't very helpful. So you can use a timer, you can use a good old-fashioned watch, or even just the watch feature on your phone. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to hit start when the contraction begins, and you are going to want to write that time down, and then you're going to want to write the time down when it ends. Then you can do that simple math to figure out how long the contraction was. And then you are going to make note of the time when the next contraction starts, and then that will allow you to see the time between the two contractions, and that gives you some valuable information. Okay, so now you've at least made note in the next couple of days to start playing around with contraction timers. If they're frustrating at all to you, go to the good old paper and pencil method. And also a good time to just kind of reconfirm with your birth team when they want you to come in. The really common rule of coming in to the hospital or birth center is the 5-1-1 pattern. So with 5-1-1, contractions are about 5 minutes apart. They're 1 minute in length, so they last for 1 minute. And that has been the pattern that's been present for about 1 hour. And if that's the pattern that's been present, then it's a pretty sure bet that you are in what's called active labor. It's still stage 1 labor, but now you're in that really progressive active stage of stage 1 labor. And so at this time, you're going to be making your way to the hospital or birth center. Upon arrival, most likely they're going to ask you to go through some triage procedures. And this is going to vary at each location, but most often they're looking for some information about the health of the baby, so they might use some fetal heart monitoring. Most likely as well, with your consent, they're going to assess your dilation. And in this active part of stage 1 labor, you're likely to be around 3 to 4, maybe 5 centimeters of dilation. So once you've made it through triage and they've determined that you are in fact in this active labor state, then you're going to make your way to your birthing room, also sometimes known as the labor and delivery unit or room. And that's where you are really going to want to, along with the help of your birth partner and birth team, you're going to want to set the stage or set the scene how you want it. So maybe that's getting the lights down low. Maybe that's putting on some music. Maybe your place of birth allows for some essential oils or something else that's just going to make you feel comfortable. In active labor, you still may be wanting to walk the halls and do all of those kind of things that are perfectly fine. But the difference is, as you're walking those halls, when a contraction comes on, most likely you are going to need to stop and pause and just be with that contraction, as opposed to in pre-labor or early stage 1 labor, where you may be able to distract yourself through the contractions. Now that's probably not on the table. So again, great to walk the halls and move in many different ways, which we'll discuss, but now you're not able to distract yourself through. Okay, so I am going to list some of the very common positions that you may be laboring in this active part of stage 1 labor, but then we will, in a separate video, delve into that a bit more, and that's going to be when you have the chance to practice these positions. All right, so in this active labor state, walking, dancing, standing, doing lunges, doing squatting, maybe being on your hands and knees, or sitting or rocking on a birth ball, all of those are really great positions to be in. And the advantages to many of those positions is that gravity is helping pull the baby's head down onto the cervix. And it's the pulling or the resting of the baby's head onto the cervix which helps labor to progress and helps with that dilation or that cervical opening to be progressive and to reach 10 centimeters. It also can make your contractions more effective. All right, so we know there's many positions that you can labor in. If you are planning an unmedicated birth, then most of these options should be available to you. If you are planning a birth where you have an epidural, then your mobility may be somewhat limited, but it's likely that you're not going to get that epidural until later on in that active stage 1. So it does still make a lot of sense to utilize your mobility and gravity dependent positions to help labor progress. Okay, again, we're gonna have a chance to practice all of those positions in a different segment. Now let's talk a bit about some breathing options that we have in labor. And I'm going to talk about 2, and there's probably more, but these 2 we're going to practice right here, right now. So the first option is to do a slow inhale and a vocal exhale, and that might be a moan or something like that. And the next one then is light and quick. In through your nose, out through your mouth, and it's a very fast pattern of maybe 1 or 2 breaths per second. And the theory is that you want to keep with the slow breath pattern for as long as you can. And then there might be a point where you're not able to keep up with that slow breathing and you need to switch to faster breathing. But holding your breath, with some exceptions, doesn't have a role in this active stage of labor. So we want to keep breathing. All right, so let's all get ready to practice that slow inhale and that vocal exhale. And while we're doing that, I want you to draw some attention to just like how your jaw feels, how your eyes are. Are they closed real tight and clenched, or are they just like softly closed, or are they open? Also pay attention to how your fists are. Are they balled up real tight? Are your hands open and relaxed? And we'll discuss why that's important as well. Okay, so we'll take that slow inhale and or you may laugh at me here, but that's okay, it's worth it. Something called horse lips. And that is where you get your lips like really flapping on the exhale. And it can help to kind of lighten the mood. It can also help to reset if your exhales have been really met with a lot of resistance and a lot of gripping. This can help kind of give a reset. So it's something like this. It might take me a couple tries to get it right, but again. Practice it with me. I don't want to be alone here. Okay, so practicing these ahead of time is going to make it easier for you to call on these techniques when you are in labor. But in the slow breathing, we have slow inhale, potentially a vocal exhale. The lower, the more guttural that exhale sound, that's going to relate most likely to more pelvic floor opening. And then as well, if our eyes are just gently closed or gently open, not wide open or not tightly closed, that's going to help with more opening as well. Same thing with our fists. If we're meeting our contractions with really tight fists, likely we're doing some guarding, maybe lower down in our pelvis. So slow inhale, do it with me. Audible exhale. Or slow inhale and horse lips exhale. So I'll practice that a couple times a day from now until your birth. The next one, again, is light and quick breathing, and this becomes relevant when we really can't sustain that slow breathing anymore. And I can't say when that's going to be. It might not happen, or you might find you need to go to this light quick pretty early on. So it's maybe more of the Hollywood version, and it's like this. And it's about 1 per second. It could also be in and out through the mouth, so maybe and that's also a good one to practice. So it can allow you to breathe through some pretty intense contractions. Okay, now we are definitely still in active stage 1 labor, and let's talk about how our birth partner might be able to support us through this stage. And hopefully you guys have had a conversation, and maybe it's part of your birth plan of what is going to be helpful. For example, if you like massage, then maybe this is going to show up in this stage. If you hate massage, it's probably not something that is going to be helpful for you. But ways for your partner to give support include massage, doing a double hip squeeze, which we will have a chance to practice later, but they are most likely standing over you, and they have their hands on that iliac crest, and their elbows are out and they're squeezing in. Another one that we will have a chance to practice is the SI joint compression. And this is very similar, but instead of the hands being like this, now the hands are like this. Elbows are still out, so the force goes this way. And that can feel really nice as well. So these two things are comfort measures that feel good, and they also can promote more opening and more space of that bony pelvis to allow the head to come down. All right. Other things that your birth partner can do is offer you water, suggest position changes. So regardless of the positions that you're in, you should be changing about every 20 minutes or so. And that allows movement of the baby, and it just allows more progression. You may find resistance in your own self to want to change. You might get really comfortable in a position, and it might be appropriate that your birth partner or birth team really encourages you to move around so you can keep progressing. So again, roughly every 20 minutes it makes sense to shift positions. If at this point you've had an epidural, maybe your position change is going from your right side to your left side, or maybe it's having your leg kind of down when you're on your side, and then the position change is bringing your leg up really high. There's plenty of ways to be creative and move and change positions even if you're not able to get out of bed. Okay, another thing that your partner can do is they can begin to model the breath pattern that might be good for you to do. So if they notice that you're resulting or you're kind of shifting to either a breath hold or a really tense breath, if they start breathing in one of these ways that we just practiced, then it's likely that you are going to just follow without even like words needing to be exchanged. Maybe you've felt that around any like a super calm person that you're in the presence of. Your whole energy just kind of calms and maybe your breath slows a bit. On the flip side, if there's someone that produces some kind of nervous energy and they're breathing real fast, you might follow that as well. So the birth partner can be really instrumental in, without verbal communication, helping to shift things a little bit. Okay, so that basically, we went from early stage 1 labor and we're stopping before transition. So our next topic is going to be this transition stage. And we'll go from transition and then we'll delve into stage 2, which is when pushing begins. So see you there.